All right. Hello, Tiffany. I'm so grateful to have you here. And you're tuning in from sunny San Diego.
I am. Yes, it's so nice to be here. Thanks for having me. A little foggy now, but the sun's peeking here soon.
Good, good,
So
good,
good to
good.
see you.
Amazing. Yeah, from one sunny place to another. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Put us both near an ocean and everything will be well.
Seriously. Seriously. Me and some saline, salt water are a good thing. Although I'm taking a little break from being at the beach right now until the hurricanes come and hit up at the big rains, the
Hmm.
beach here gets a little bit seaweed filled, but it's a great time.
I love that.
I am grateful to have you here. We actually just were recently introduced from Rachel Pastor, who started Golden Rule, and together you guys are bridging and creating a really beautiful. I mean, I'm going to let you share more about it in your words, but I just wanted to get to know you more. And I know we're going to be collaborating at some capacity too, which is really exciting. And I dabbled and looked at your website and was just wowed by your background. And I think that you are such a pivotal and important voice for this conversation. And so I thank you for being here.
Thank you.
I always like to ask people, yeah, like from their perspective, because I already gave you an intro of when someone asks you what you do, how is it that you answer?
Such a good question. Yeah, and thanks for having me. We're excited to be here. Gosh, at the root of it, at the core of it, I help humanity awaken through plant
Mm,
medicine. And there's a lot of different pillars, that I take with that approach. But really, I'm a microdosing advisor for companies, and that approach that I've taken is because it allows me to support businesses that are in the psychedelic space reach more people and have more impact on the people that this medicine is really serving, and it allows us to expand the impact. And so at the root of it, it's helping people heal and expand and grow and access the deepest truth, the most sovereign devotional truth within themselves that they can express in whatever way is most true for them in the world, in business, in life, in partnership, in all areas. And so I really truly believe that these medicines allow us that access point, and then we're in the responsibility of integrating it and bringing it into these aspects of our lives that will help us essentially live a most awakened, vibrant, aligned, authentic expression within ourselves. So, while I'm doing like microdosing advising for a beautiful company, Golden Rule Mushrooms, as you mentioned, I also teach people how to work with psychedelics and how to microdose. And it's one thing to have a beautiful product, but it's another to teach people how to effectively and intentionally work with that product, that medicine, that psychedelic medicine, so that they can reach the fullness of what it's really providing for them and what it really can offer them.
beautiful. Yeah, thank you for that. That's super important right now, very needed in this space. I really appreciate that. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
what was your, I mean, how did this all kind of come about? I would love to know just how,
Yeah.
like, were psychedelics introduced early to you, early on in your early life? Like, when was that point where the mycelium network found you, or what kind of psychedelics have you explored in? When you speak to psychedelics, that's a broad term. So I'm just curious for you when that sort of entry point was.
Totally. Yeah, totally. So I have a 16-year background in corporate America, working in the healthcare industry and executive roles, business development, sales strategy, and, you know, climbed the ladder with what I thought was really success at that time for me in my life. And it was that. And I loved it. And I'm a Division I basketball player, so I'm very type A, I'm very driven. So sliding into that industry in a team environment and a number attached to my results was exactly the direction that my life was set up as at that time. So I really enjoyed it in a lot of ways, but I realized, as I climbed and, created more success and had more income, the demand also increased. And the giving my life to a company also really
Mhm.
increased in a lot of ways. And I share that because, I kind of woke up one day and I was like, wow, like I'm exhausted. I feel
Mhm.
really burned out. I like what I'm doing, but I don't love it. And I just knew there was something deeper for me that I didn't know. I wasn't aware of what that could be. I love to help people. I love to coach. I love to work out, all those sorts of things. And so I started to dive deep into the personal development space, emotional intelligence, leadership programs. I was working with an amazing therapist. I was working through my own shit and just navigating things and trying to get to the root of, all right, what is it? What's the thing that I really want to do?
Mm.
And we have to clear out a lot of the debris to access that truth within us. And so, long story short, all those things were incredibly valuable at the time, and they were really serving and really helped me in a lot of ways. And I started to hear about psychedelics, and this was about 10 years ago. So 10 years ago, you go online, there's not really, definitely not the research that's out today. There were no
Totally.
microdosing protocols aside from one that was kind of lingering. And it wasn't mainstream. So there wasn't much information. But I educated myself enough to feel really pulled in this direction. And I had access to a source here locally. And I was like, you know what? Oh, I was on medication. I was on Lexapro and Adderall for 6 years.
Okay.
And that was to literally just kind of get through the day. And the goal was I wanted to get off those medications. And so I was like, you know what? I'm going to microdose and I'm going to see if I can get off these medications. I'm reading a little bit of how it's valuable and supportive for that. And so I did. I started my own protocol. I did that for about 3 months, tapered completely off both of those medications, side effect free. I didn't have any withdrawal symptoms. And so that whole piece right there, I was like, holy crap, there's something here. And I also, at that time, because I'm no longer on the medication of suppressing so much of my emotional, perspectives, all of a sudden, all these things are coming up and I'm feeling invigorated. I'm feeling alive. I'm feeling more confident. And now I'm like, okay, from this state, I can make a career shift. I need to look at something where I just felt so called to bring what I really needed at that time to other people. And that was microdosing education, information, teaching people how to actually work with this medicine. I just was winging it and it worked, but there were so many things that would be so valuable to bring from that place. So I did. I created a business. I started coaching people. I stayed in corporate, started coaching people on the side, and slowly just continued to build and expand. And I did the microdosing business facilitation for about 4 years. And then naturally, those clients wanted to go deeper. So I got trained and did facilitation. And at that time, I also was sitting in my own deeper medicine work with psilocybin, with ayahuasca. And it just continued to form the path of the direction. And so I ended up, completely leaving corporate and kept going on this track. And about 6 years in at this point, I'm like, I really miss the business background. But how can I bridge these worlds together? Because I don't want to leave one and I don't want to go back there. So what does that really look like? And so I was like, okay, finally it came together. I want to advise for companies. I want to come in from a place where psychedelic or wellness companies are bringing psychedelics, but they need support and they need strategy and they need development, but they also need education around, how to work with these medicines. So that's what I'm doing now, advising with companies. I'm still, within companies, teaching people how to work with the medicine, but there's so much on the back end of the business that's also supporting it grow in a lot of ways.
Wow, that's so beautiful. How like spirit just your spirit and the spirit of all that's kind of integrating in all of us right now because I think we're starting to see such a shift in conscious business and how we can utilize what we're learning from a lot of these. And I resonate so much with what you said because I've come from a more corporate space too, where I had just a whole team and I wasn't actually on sports teams, but that actually says a lot, about the archetype that you carry too of like team sports and, um, yeah, attached to a network, like those kinds of things. I was like, oh, wow, yeah, that's very interesting. And that is really the ecosystem. That really is a metaphor again. And so I think that it resonates with me of kind of going deeper into the medicine work and being like, okay, I don't really want to just be out here in the jungle though. Like we need to really be spreading this information. And so I find that there's this interesting choreography in this dance that we're learning of how to infuse and be able to walk in both worlds. And I think it's very important. It's
Mhm.
pivotal, in fact. So what you're doing is really special. And yeah, grateful for that. Um, Before you stepped into the medicine path, who are you becoming in the eyes of the world? Like in the corporate sense, but also interpersonally? Like what kinds of things have psychedelics
Mm. Mhm.
helped maybe initiate or ignite, but like what kinds of things, because coming from corporate, I think you spoke to this, I like what I'm doing, but I don't love it. So interpersonally, I like to just get into like the intrinsics of people's values and like why, and then how maybe psychedelics has helped support that.
Yes, I think at the time in corporate that's what I knew at that time in my life. And like I said, there wasn't this other awareness of these other opportunities, at least for me, with
Mhm.
where I was. And yeah, I think what I can answer to that is I know through microdosing when I was working with that medicine at the time, when I first started working with it, is this aliveness, right? I attached
Mhm.
my identity to my income in a lot of ways. It's like the
Mhm.
your self-worth is your net worth, so to speak, right? That was like my truth at that time. And it was always just this go, go, go mentality. What's next? What's next? What's next? And you pair that with my upbringing of survival, right? We were homeless. We were living in and out of shelters. I'm the only one in my family to have gone to college, yet alone receive a full ride scholarship and graduate. That is very foreign in our family. And no one, low poverty. No one has earned like a high income. And so I've really come in and shifted that in the generation, but there also was a lot of pressure on that. And so being in
Mhm.
a career of corporate and the position that I was in that I grew and expanded into, um, there was a lot of attachment to that
Mhm.
identity.
Mhm.
And I had to do such deep work I still am, right, to unravel that and to shift that identity and to create safety in these other directions. And so, when I think of the identity of back then, it was that attachment. And these medicines, I mean, even microdosing slowly started to support me in peeling those layers off and getting to the deeper aspects of my truest identity outside of the job, outside of
Mhm.
the
Mhm.
numbers, outside of what other people were saying my identity was.
Mhm. Mhm.
And so I would say that's a big aspect of the values that I started to shift the direction towards is who am I? How do I want to show up? And what do I really desire for my life? And like making those true confident decisions versus being in a company where they're making the decisions for me and I'm showing up a certain way. I'm
Yes.
getting calls on the calendar. I'm having to go to these conferences that I don't give a shit about. And it was exhausting.
Mhm.
And so now all of a sudden I'm waking up to things that actually bring me pleasure and joy. And I have to integrate and take the time and the spaciousness to really let that settle and let that land and let that become a new embodiment of what I'm creating in my life.
So big. It's so special to hear because I'm hearing it across the board, and maybe you are too, and you can speak to this. I'm sensing across the board. There was like, and you would know because I think you're in the same age bracket. There is this moment, I think it's those of us that are like right behind a different, like just a little bit of an older generation.
Mhm.
Maybe some of us have young children, maybe not. But I sense this archetype of woman that we're looking towards certain individuals that were thought leaders and beautiful voices in the space and just across the board. I think I'm really proud of our generation. We started going to therapy like you mentioned. We started digging deeper into the things that maybe weren't working for us, all the while still of course just living in America, trying to survive and saying yes to jobs that maybe again weren't fully igniting our inside
Mhm.
inner child and all those things. So, but I want to unpack a little bit of this, that intrinsic desire for what is really giving me joy. So, when you were diagnosed, or when you were not diagnosed, what's the word? When you were, what's the word when they, um, I'm getting lost in a word. When they give you a prescription, when they prescribed you, there we go.
Mhm.
Um, you said Lexapro and Adderall, and those are big ones. And we know
Mhm.
in this space, those are big ones to
Mhm.
detox from. So you mentioned not having any sort of withdrawals and stuff. So that's a maybe a rare case. I don't know in your experience what you're seeing across the board, but I almost want to just peel back some of that of just in my experience of hearing people, there is this desire to get off of the medication, even though sometimes it's been romanticized in our past. We're
Mhm.
reaching a forefront and a frontier of where now people are like, I really want to get rid of this. Like they're starting to remember. And
Mm.
it's that sweet remembrance that I kind of want to get to. So, what would you attest to coming from a challenged background of, a family that didn't like all that you spoke to, didn't have a lot of resources, didn't have a lot of maybe support with even, you know, I relate to that where my family doesn't even believe in therapy, put it that way.
Mhm. Mhm.
So, where was this point in your consciousness where you were like, because this is before, I think there was like a moment even before it sounds like the
Mhm.
psychedelic space started to happen for you. What was that? Like, who was Tiffany then? I'm just curious
Mhm.
to unpack that a bit.
Mhm. Yeah, it's a big question. Tiffany then was lost,
Mm,
struggling, sad, anxious, depressed, burnt out, lonely, right? Confused, all those sorts of
mm,
things. Um, there wasn't a lot of structure and guidance in my upbringing. And so
mhm,
there was this identity of a unknown identity within myself. So I was looking for other things to create safety in these pockets of
mhm,
stability. And I found that in a corporate career. It was stable, it was set up. I could walk into it and I just had to do my job and do my thing. And that created safety. And then it brought in great income. And then that built things
mhm,
that I can live places and get a car and like, life. And so that was, it was painful,
mm,
like it was a really challenging time, but, or not but and there was always this voice deep
mhm,
within me
mhm,
that I knew I was meant to be different and something more. And I didn't have
mhm,
the tools or the resource on how on earth that was going to happen or what that meant, but it was this knowing. It was just this knowing. And when I look at my family and the dynamic of everything, I was always that slight different one in the
mhm,
family
mhm,
where I had resilience, I had strength, I took responsibility at a young age, but
mhm.
most people were in addiction in my family, and I could participate in those things and then pull out when I wanted. Like it was never an addiction perspective for
I
me. There was always this
see.
thing, right? And so as I started to go more into that direction through the therapy and the development, personal development, and then psychedelics, that voice started to penetrate more loudly, get more clear. I started to
Mhm.
learn how to actually listen to it and cater and tend to it, and it just continued to grow. Um, and so I can also touch on, the piece that you mentioned with transitioning from pharmaceuticals
Yeah.
completely off, right? It is foreign for most people, a higher percentage of people to have withdrawal symptoms and to, have side effects when they taper off medication, especially being on them for that long and depending on the amount of the milligram. What we're seeing with microdosing is it's completely alleviating that process of withdrawal and side effects
I
because
see.
of the alignment of what it's doing in the brain with the neuroplasticity. It's increasing serotonin receptors, the 5-HT2A receptors, which a lot of medications do. So when you taper off, it's creating like a chemical imbalance of that because you're so used to receiving that within the body and the brain. But the microdosing is essentially replacing it without all the other stuff that's within it. So it's super
Mhm.
fascinating as to how that is such a successful process for a lot of people.
That's beautiful. Yeah, that helps me also just with other clients that I work with, just understand more. And this is just still very such a, I'm so grateful for all the research that's going into this because I think I see a lot of beautiful vibrancy coming back to the planet.
Yes.
Do you find, just to be fun and like, do you find, okay, because psilocybin, I'm trying to remember the moment in which I remember the time. I just don't remember if it was hearing other people exactly, but when did it find you? Like when were you finally like, okay, I'm gonna give this a shot? Like what was that moment where you're like, I'm willing to give this a shot, being dependent on maybe other assets that supported your mental health? And what was that moment of switching and kind of what did it look like?
Mm-hmm. Well, it's interesting. I would say like most people, psychedelics kind of start recreationally in ways.
Yes.
And for me, it was that, right? It was when I was partying and I was drinking and I was like, oh yeah, I'm just going to go in the hammocks and take a bunch of mushrooms, and took too many and it was too overwhelming. And so I actually had a lot of fear around it. And it wasn't until I started to do the deeper work of realizing and learning a little bit that I did educational wise and research wise of, oh, okay, maybe like we can work with these low doses and that could be effective, and I could be more quote unquote in control and more grounded and not have this
Hmm.
like huge psychedelic experience, but I can still receive the benefits of what I'm learning that's possible essentially. And so I remember I was with a friend actually, and I was in this conversation, and this was like not a new conversation to be in. It was like, I hate my job. How do I get out of here? I don't want to be here. And it was just that constant back and forth. I was going to leave, and then I came back. I was going to leave, and then I made more money. I was going to leave, and then the end of the year paycheck was coming. It was like
Hmm.
just these things. And I just remember having this conversation, and we were in the park, and I was like, you know what? I'm gonna do it different this time, and I'm just gonna explore,
Mm.
and I'm just gonna see. And I was like, I know myself. If I pull everything out at once, it's not gonna be emotionally successful for me. It's not gonna be grounding for me. So how can I just start with one little thing and stay in this career and just let this lead where it wants to go? And that's what I did. I started microdosing, and honestly, within even a week, I was like, holy shit, there's like something that feels really anchored in this. And I just kept going and kept going and kept going. So yeah, I mean, it's hard to pinpoint like a specific moment.
Sure.
Um,
It's
but
helpful though to hear just I think people's
yeah,
experiences, and there's so much fear. I find
I
so
know.
much fear around this. And I think of spiral dynamics when like because we're just repeating, right? Like I think consciousness is just like pancaking itself on top of each other. So now we're in these new avatars, these new you know, so the spiral dynamics, like the Woodstock era was like just super
Yeah.
high, really high,
Well,
um,
exactly. Well, and I
and
had
not
this
really.
moment. I remember I wanted to sit with, it's coming back to me now. I wanted to sit with ayahuasca, right?
Okay.
And I was feeling this deep pull of sitting with ayahuasca, but I was on medication, so I couldn't. And so that was part of it. I remember in that same conversation in the park, it was also including this sit, and you have to be off at least 30 days, right? Minimum. You usually want more of any SSRIs with ayahuasca, and so that was a part of the support that I was feeling. Was yes, I want to get off for all these other reasons. And there was like a deeper, deeper, deeper pull that I didn't know what that was leading to, that was calling me into this bigger sit. And so it created some motivation to also get off the medication in its own like spiritual
Beautiful.
way. Quite honestly, it was definitely a spiritual calling experience. And then I was off, right? I was off I did 60 days. And then I went into a ceremony, and that ceremony changed my life. It was clear as day that I was meant to bring this work in. It was clear as day that there was no going back to that life.
Wow. And
Hmm.
when you say ceremony, was that ayahuasca or psilocybin?
It was that ayahuasca ceremony. Hmm.
Okay, and so that's when the like
Hmm.
blueprint was revealed. Yeah, that's a very
Hmm.
similar aspect to me too. I love the
Hmm.
idea of going more gently. I didn't do that. I went cold turkey, so my
Yeah.
nervous system was like,
Oh yeah.
um, but it
I'm
is what
going
it
all
is.
in.
I literally was like, quit this career. I'm going this way, and I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm just gonna go for it cold turkey. Um, Meaning because I had no background of, it just anyway, it was a complete career pivot.
Yeah.
But really, it was no working for a while there, months and
Hmm.
months and months, maybe even a full year of just not working and just being like, what am I gonna
It's
do
just like
next?
so good sometimes if you
It's
can.
wonderful. I mean, I
Hmm.
think that all of us can. We just need to lean in.
Hmm.
That's the trick, is that most of us tell us that we can't because we're in individualism like consciousness where we're like, oh, and so what to me, that's why I like made it fun with like the mycelium network. I think these spores are here to really they start to infuse into certain people's frequency even before, right? Because time is not linear. So it meets you in the right time. And there's a select, call it a spiritual awakening. There's all different kinds of ways of travel that people find this. But I think there is such a curiosity now, and it seems like we were just early adopters. Who was telling you about some of the ceremonial work? Like coming from I just love to get inside. I'm like,
Hmm.
because in the corporate spaces, most people weren't talking about this, especially at that timeline.
Definitely didn't come from corporate. I'll tell you
Okay,
that
okay, yeah.
much. No, it
It
was
was
the
just,
community, friends in the community, living in San Diego, and local work being done here, and people that I trust, having these beautiful experiences and sharing them. And I was just deeply called. It was deeply resonating with me.
gotcha. So this is like your outside. So you're putting on the, corporate attire, and then you're going out and you had like different friend groups, and that's what was
Mhm.
kind of okay. And that probably exists for a lot of people that are listening.
Oh
They're
my
like in
gosh.
these
I mean,
roles.
yes. And even building a business while staying in corporate, those two energies, I did that for years where I had like my corporate hat on, was doing my thing throughout the day. And then throughout in between meetings, I was seeing clients about psychedelics, and those energies from like medical device to psychedelics was such a jolt to my nervous system of going back and forth with that. And I was making it work because I wanted the stability of this resourcing the passion that I was establishing, and that
Mhm.
was the way that I did it that worked for me. But oh yeah, those two energies, that was probably the main thing for me, that was the main thing I needed to change, was that.
Yeah, walking almost like it's almost like dissociative diet, like because you're like,
Mhm.
what am I doing here? Yeah,
Managing too
yeah,
much.
yeah,
And then
yeah.
all that energy that's being poured into the company of doing what I need to do my job successfully, I was just really sitting with the fact that I was pouring so much of my energy into someone else's vision, that woke
Mhm.
me up in a lot of ways, while I was like so beyond grateful for the corporate life that I lived. It has supported so much of my life tremendously. It's
Mhm.
funded my business to have it grow and be what it is. And it taught me so much about my life and myself. It's not like I'm shaming corporate in any way.
Sure.
It's was so valuable in so many ways. And I realized that energy, if I just trust myself and trust this calling to pour all of that into this versus part time, it's going to go in the direction that it needs to go. And that
Right,
was
for
like
your
a come to
persona.
Jesus moment.
Yeah, yeah. When you
Uh-huh.
say that ayahuasca kind of gave you that revelatory awareness,
Mhm.
what did that look like? Was it like in your visionary, if you care to share? I know some people don't like to talk about their ceremonies, but just curious from your perspective what that looked like.
Yeah, thank you. I'm totally open to that. It was so clear that I was terrified. Like it was like, you're leaving this now. It showed me the whole vision of the step that needed to be taken at that time, not the fullness of where it was going, but the
Okay.
step to support where it was going to eventually go. And I wasn't ready.
Hmm.
Like it scared me, where it felt like a decision that I needed to make right away, but I needed time to really make that decision. And then, my controlling self was like, it was just an experience. That's true. I felt that, and I don't need to go do all those things. And so then it just led to me eventually sitting in more ceremonies. And then I went through a whole year apprenticeship training with my teacher to serve it just more privately to some of the clients that I was working with. And yeah, it was just ridiculously clear the more that I sat. But it was a beautiful mirror of me, of reflecting back to me where my resistance was, where I wasn't trusting myself, where, I was stuck in this, how do I go from a stable logic setup career into an illegal business? Like, I just wasn't making any
Right.
sense, quite
Sure.
honestly.
Yeah.
Quite honestly. I'm like, what? You want me to go do that? And the more that I just sunk into that, I answered it. Yes, I am going to do that. That's exactly what I'm going
Wow.
to
Ah, it's so exciting. I feel like there's going to be just this. I mean, there's the way that I'm such a mystical type person, but I see this being such a pivotal time where those of us that were willing
do.
to go against, like the Jane Fondas of the world, and I like looked at them like,
Yes.
yes, like she was so willing to go against the grain in her era. And so now I see so many of us and I feel so similar to that. because I just started early on talking about I was shadow banned left. I've been shadow banned for years. I
I'm
used to get
shadow banned right now. Rest
thousands
in
of
peace to
calls.
my
Yeah.
Instagram.
Right. I'm like, and now and that's the test
Oh,
of spirit, really, is like your
yes.
own spirit, really, of the gumption and the tenacity and the willingness to just go, you know what? Beyond all form and all of this
Hmm.
algorithmic stuff, I just know my truth and I'm just going to keep
Hmm.
pushing. And that I think will be so exponentially honored because going against our truth, and I talk about this so much in, the groups that I help guide as well, is if you're ignoring that, that niggling feeling won't ever go away. So that's the
Hmm.
integration. And
Hmm.
that perfectly brings us kind of like to this next flow. Would love to know, just in your experience, how just speak to integration in your experience of what that looked like for you personally, what other people might glean from hearing from you just in a short sort of snippet. And I know that this is what you do for a living and teach, and people can go more into by following your work, but just some, yeah, synthesis of what integration means and how
Hmm.
important.
Yeah, integration for me, it's not like this checklist. It's a lifestyle. It's an
Mhm.
embodiment. And it's something where whether it's through medicine work or something that you're just sitting with within yourself, something that you're processing or a download or something just that you're navigating, and you can look at it through the lens of so many different things, but what I really focus on with integration is creating the space to
Mhm.
nurture that part, whether that looks like more presence, deep rest, establishing certain rituals, certain practices, creating certain structures in your life so that you can give the time and the energy to the things that you're looking to create in your life through that application or through that implementation. And yeah, I see integration as a way of life. It's just an embodiment.
Mhm.
If we look at it through the lens of medicine work, medicine starts to bring things to the surface and through your intentions as well, and like the goals and what you're looking to establish within these experiences. And if you don't have the space to give that energy towards something or something that you want to change, a habit or a belief, you have to install new ways of viewing it. You have to create something new so that that becomes a new habit in your life or a new belief
Mhm.
in your life. And so a lot of that for me is sitting in deep presence, slowing
Mhm.
down, a reminder to slow down. That's always a practice that I'm cultivating
Same.
because I can go and go and go, and I love it. In
Mhm.
so many ways. And I'm also like, okay, this is the old version coming back in. Slow it down, get
Mhm.
back into presence, be more intentional. And from that deep intentional space of slowing down, I actually speed up because it's more aligned and it's more intentional and it's less doing and it's more
Yes.
being.
Mhm.
And when I'm in the being versus the doing, doing, going, 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 I'm actually more present.
Mhm.
It's more effective. There's more depth and connections in the work that I'm doing, which creates more aligned creativity for those to grow in a lot of ways.
Beautiful. Yeah, that's so well said. Do you continue to microdose? Is that something that you continue to do? That's like a protocol that you integrate into your daily life?
Absolutely, yes. So, over time of working with the main ones that I microdose with, psilocybin, LSD, I've been microdosing with San Pedro as well, which is really beautiful.
Beautiful.
But I don't really do protocols as much
Okay.
because it's just a lot more intuitive at this time in my life, where it took time to understand how I responded to different medicines, but also different dosing ranges of those
Mhm.
medicines. And so now that's really solid and really anchored, and I can intuitively tune into like, okay, I have this project that I'm working on, and I personally love working with LSD for more of like the analytical problem solving sort of experience with that, and that works amazing. So I'm always on and off microdosing. I take days off in between every so often, or I'll take like little breaks, a week break. But yeah, I would say over the course of the last 10 years, it's been on and off microdosing.
That's beautiful. Yeah, and people are actually, I've been hearing, I've never done this. I'm sure you've heard a lot of people talking about microdosing, even ayahuasca. in different,
Mm-hmm.
and I've never done that. And I was like, oh wow, how interesting. A
Mm-hmm.
client had just reached out to me and asked me, she was like, yeah, I've been hearing that you can get these, and I was like, that's beautiful. Down here in Mexico, it's definitely happening. But I think that's great just to kind of infuse the essence of different things into. I also love to microdose LSD.
Yeah.
It doesn't happen that often for me. I go in waves where it'll be like, I went almost a year of not, and then I forgot. And I was like, wait,
Mm-hmm.
what? I love this molecule. It works really well in my system and only microdose. I don't really do big, unless it's a ceremonial experience. I haven't done even a ceremonial side of LSD in years. It's just
Yeah.
not something that I do often, but microdosing feels really good. And yeah, I love how you spoke to that, the embodiment, slowing down. And I actually watercolored something that said slow is fast a few
Mm-hmm.
years back. And that resonates with me deeply because you get so much more efficient things done that are resonating in your spirit rather than just filling the void. So yeah, that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Let's see, to kind of like land the plane a little bit, I would love to just hear your vision of what you see kind of happening in the space as an oracle, as one that's kind of been seeing this space, how it's shifted already in a decade, and how much is you just got back from psychedelic science, and would love to just get your feedback and your oracular pulse on what you see coming in the space and what you vision cast and desire to see too.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You know, there's so much incredible, like we're at such a pivotal moment, I feel like right now. And there's so much incredible data and research that is here with psychedelics and the therapeutic component that it's providing. And that's where I really see this going with psychedelics is access for more people. And while there's a lot of pushback of like drug development companies and the therapeutic clinical perspective of these medicines, that is what's driving the ability for us to be where we are today with psychedelics and the track that we're on. Without approaching it from a therapeutic clinical perspective, the data and the research wouldn't really be able to back and showcase the benefits of the healing of addiction and PTSD and anxiety and depression, but not just from a therapeutic lens. That also is supporting people like you and I, right? Burnouts, on medication, wanting to reach peak performance, wanting to feel more optimized and present in our work. So I see it being valuable on both sides. And ultimately, where that lands us is, I'm a stand for access. And what might work really well for somebody in a clinical therapeutic setting might not work for somebody who wants to go and sit in a retreat and be more in nature, right? Just as if you flip the coin on both of those, it might not
Sure.
resonate with everybody. And so that's where I really see this going is the underground is going to stay. It's only the capacity is only widening, which is so beautiful and powerful to see the unitedness coming together with that. And I also see this other perspective coming in and driving so much of it forward from that perspective as well.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. I totally see that. And I was talking with a friend of mine who's a transpersonal Jungian therapist too, and she does psychedelic assisted therapy as well. And we were just talking about just that same thing of it's a yes and, sometimes people that are kind of hearing about, and I'm hearing, I guess in Texas maybe that they're going to put in the Iboga Center potentially. That's like a
Mm-hmm.
rumbling that might be happening because that's very, very, very
Huge.
talked about.
Mm-hmm.
That's huge because that's very talked about here in Mexico. And that's why I've been doing my retreats out of the country because it's
Yeah.
this gray area. And so I just see, yeah, similar to what you're saying, there's a yes and I think both are good for everybody to bare feet on the ground, be back in nature. That's what definitely healed a lot of my system was completely, I'm a lot of air, mind, mind, mind. So to come back to that word intrinsic, like the elements, the elemental wisdom. Even though I grew up on land, I had kind of lost touch. I lost the plot there for a bit. So I find so much excitement in the conversations around these clinical spaces that are developing and using sound and all these spaces that maybe people wouldn't ever go to a retreat, so they're going to find it through that, but then that's the sort of gateway towards other experiences. So no matter what, it's a frontier that I'm excited to embark on with you too, and as an ally, grateful for your voice. And thank you so much for sharing. Is there anything else, like a final whisper, that you would like to share with anybody that is listening that might be finding themselves in our stories and some of what was shared today?
Yeah, I would say, something that always feels resonant is, there's a certain amount of this finds certain people, right? When we do interviews like this and we have these conversations and it's public and it reaches an audience, it reaches certain people. Although it's welcome to reach anybody, but there's certain people that feel called to listen to this. And if that's you and you're listening or you're watching, and this is something like you're at a pivotal decision in your life, or there is that nudge, sort of like what we've been talking about through both of our personal stories, is to listen to that. Like really trust that you've landed here today to hear whatever information that you're taking away from this experience with us, and to really invite yourself into listening to that.
Mm, yeah, exactly. And then the final is just to share a little bit about if you would like to, with Golden Rule, where people can actually embark on this journey themselves.
Yes. So goldenrulemushrooms.com. We have a beautiful partnership with Elle right now, which is awesome. We're so excited about it. And this is a microdosing company. So psilocybin products, LSD products, shipping everywhere in the US. And it's just a beautiful company, really beautiful medicine. And I'm in there teaching the community, so you can join us if you want more resources and more education. You can take the quiz on our website to help kind of refine a product that might be best for you. If you have questions, you can email us at hello@goldenrulemushrooms.com. I run monthly educational workshops, Q&As. There's just tons of resources in there for you guys. If you have any questions, there's a lot that you can explore. So really grateful for you having us, Elle. Really, really grateful for this
Yeah.
conversation.
Yeah, me too. Thank you so much, Tiffany. I really appreciate you being here. And all of Tiffany's information and the links to Golden Rule will be below. And yeah, until next time, thank you so much.
Thank you.